1971. I was 11 years old. I'd returned from Bolivia. My dad turned on the radio, Tennessee National Public Radio. Boys, come listen. The chairman of the Federal Reserve, fellow Americans, of course that's what the president says, I don't know what he said, but he said something about that. He's addressed the nation. This year we have entered officially bankruptcy. All of our assets are equivalent to all of our public debt. We are officially bankrupt. I encourage all Americans to tighten their belts, spend less, borrow less, work hard, and produce more, and we can pull out of it. Boys, my dad said, you heard it. We are bankrupt, and now it's time to work hard. A year later, boys, come on, I want you to listen to the radio again, my dad said. Turned on the radio. Report from the Alan Greenspan, chairman of the Federal Reserve. Evidently, in North America, there are not any politicians or Americans willing to tighten their belts. Everybody wants to live like if they had everything. They will not work harder, they will borrow more, and they will spend more. Which means that in approximately 30 years, North America will collapse totally, or financially collapse totally. 30 years. Ah, Jesus will come before then. I thought, it's now been 37 years. 2 years ago I was in France. An organization published a paper saying, we would like to inform fellow Europeans of what North America has just decided to do. Not having enough money to finance the war, not having enough money to finance their debt, which is now no longer 50%, it's now 98% of the entire budget that the North American government collects in taxes. 98% goes to pay the interest, and it's still not enough. And now we have a war, 2 wars, and we have home security, what do you call it, Homeland Security, and all the costs associated with that. In the airports, taxes will not pay for that. The North American government has nowhere to get money. And they can't afford to carry a war, and they cannot afford to do all the Homeland Security changes. So there's only one way to get money, and North American government has chosen that way. Beginning February of 2006, they will print all the money they need to pay the bills. Without raising it, they'll just print it. This means suicide for the American economy. 1 month later, the American government no longer is willing to inform the M3 monetary aggregate figures, which they've always before informed. They are no longer willing to inform the nations. Nobody really knows how much money they're printing anymore. We give the North Americans approximately 2 years to 2.5 years before the final collapse. It's now 2.5 years. And that organization has just released another report from France. It is not intended for Americans, by the way. It's intended for Europeans. It's intended for Europeans to read it and get ready for the final collapse, because it will affect, when North America goes down, it will affect the entire world. It's the first time in history that we have a global economy. And when North America goes down like a Titanic, every other country is chained to this Titanic. When we go down, it pulls everybody in. And they said September of 2008 is the forecast. From September, the next few months, the forecast collapse of the real U.S. economy. Every business will close. Every bank will close. Every state will close their services because they live on taxes. Only the federal government will remain. Now, we know that God controls the final date. We know this. And nobody can predict the collapse. And certainly, I hope you don't go out and say David was saying that Jesus will return in September. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not predicting the return of Jesus Christ on a certain date. I'm saying the collapse of the U.S. economy, not based on prophecy, just based solely on economic factors. The Bank of England, the the head of the Bank of England came on national television and announced to its citizens to get ready for a drastic reduction in the standard of living. Now, what does this mean? It doesn't mean the economy will collapse in September. I am praying that God will give us a year or two more. It probably won't happen unless there's a miracle, but God is a God of miracles. I am praying, Lord, give us a little more time. But it will happen in the very near future. And when that happens, there are certain consequences. There will be no food trucks going into the cities. There will be no banks and no transactions. There will be empty grocery stores, hungry, violent people. What happened in New Orleans will happen in every major city in North America. The reason I'm saying is not because of gloom and doom. In fact, it's the opposite. If we realize that time is short, and if we realize that God is in total control of events, and if we realize that the end of the financial world in North America as we know it is almost upon us, there are some very beautiful things that can happen. Number one, I get serious about my spiritual life. Number two, I focus my education in preparing for mission service and carrying out the mission of the church. Not to get a job, because there's no jobs waiting for you. I'm sorry, you were born in the wrong generation. I just spoke at Mountain View College for graduation in the Philippines. I spoke at Southern Adventist University when my daughter graduated a couple years ago. And you look at all the graduates and you say, mostly people say, congratulations, your life is before you. No. Sorry, you were born in the wrong generation. Your life is not before you. You only have a few months in which to make some very important decisions. And that is everything you are, everything you have, dedicated to the service of God. This could be the best thing that ever happened to us as a church if we wake up and go to work putting everything on the altar. We know we're going to lose a house. We know we're going to lose the cars. We know we're going to lose every single asset. The US dollar, by the way, here it is. This is a US dollar. This is $100. This is $1,000. That's what it's worth. Did you know that's what it's worth right now? The US dollar is worth only almost pennies. And the only reason, if I owe you $20 and I hand you a $20 bill, will you accept it? Yes. Because you say to yourself, this is a $20 bill. Uncle David owes me $20 and I can buy some food with this. But what if you knew it wasn't worth anything? And one of these days, the Americans are going to find out the balloon will pop. The US dollar is not worth anything. And then when I hand you a $20 bill, you'll say, you know what? Get me something that's worth something. I can't buy anything with that. And that's what's going to happen on a global scale. It already happened in Bolivia. I went down to pay my bill. I was planning just last week. 10 days ago, I was planning on leaving the airport, and they said, you got to pay your departure fee with your airplane. How much? $20-something. Okay, here it is. Oh, I'm sorry, we don't accept that currency anymore. Well, what do you want me to do? Go down to the money changers and change it. Okay. I went down to the money changers. There was about 10 of them. Excuse me, I'm here to change my $20 into local currency. Sorry, we don't buy that currency anymore. What? I grew up in this country. The US dollar has all... We don't accept US dollars anymore. None of us want to get caught dead holding dollars. Finally, one of them turned to me. I was getting desperate. That's the only thing I had. And one of them turned to me and said, Aren't you the pastor that shows up on television all the time? I think I recognize you. I said, yes. Oh, I love your television station. Man, what a blessing to my home. I'll take your $20 here. I paid my bills. If the money changers in a little small city in Bolivia won't take my US dollars, something drastic is happening. It's about to happen nationwide. Nobody who gets caught with paper money will have anything. Your retirement accounts are worth nothing. 401k, nothing. Only as you invested in God's work, what God tells you to do. Go to God. Tell Him, what do you want me to do with your money? He will tell you. But if you don't ask Him, Sister White says, He won't tell you. You have to ask Him to find out.